Hi guys, and welcome back to Not Your Mama's Murder, the podcast where each week we discuss a different true crime case. I'm Elisa Birdhill, and this week we are going to be talking about the disappearance of Bryce Laspisa. This one is a wild ride, and I actually have a lot of opinions on it, so we're going to go ahead and jump right in this week. Bryce David Laspisa was born to loving parents Michael and Karen Laspisa on April 30th of 1994 in Springfield, Illinois. Michael and Karen had dreams of moving to California, so once they retired and Bryce had graduated from high school, that's exactly what they did. In 2012, the family moved to Orange County, California, and the following fall, Bryce began his college journey at Sierra University. It's important to note that university is a 7-hour drive from his parents' home in Orange County. Bryce was described as an outgoing, artistic young man who loved to draw. He was very intelligent and spent a lot of his time playing video games on his Xbox. His dad was quoted as saying he was a social guy, he had a lot of friends, and he hung out with them often. The Laspisa family was very close. Karen said herself that her son was comfortable telling her about anything. She said that he was an open book, just like her. Bryce's freshman year of college started out wonderfully. He became best friends with his roommate Sean, started dating a young woman named Kim. He excelled in his studies of graphic and industrial design. Unfortunately, as that first year of college began to wrap up, those who cared about Bryce noticed that he started drinking pretty heavily. Sean said he noticed Bryce taking a prescription medication typically used for ADHD and eating disorders, and he was taking them in order to stay up later to either study or play games. The name of that medication is Vyvanse, which is an amphetamine drug. After the beginning of the use of the drugs, Bryce started to act in ways that all of his friends and family said were out of his character. It's important to note here that the potential side effects of Vyvanse include headache, dizziness, racing heart rate, hallucinations, nausea, trouble sleeping, and irritability. Unsurprisingly, the combination of this drug with alcohol proved to be very problematic. So let's talk about some of the odd behavior that Bryce's friends were seeing in him. Even though he seemed to be really happy in his relationship with Kim, he broke up with her, and he actually did it over text, which was concerning, and all he said was that she was better off without him. He also gave away his Xbox, which we have learned he very much enjoyed and liked to spend his time using, and a pair of diamond earrings to roommate Sean. Those earrings had been a gift from his mother, so it stands out that he would give those away as well. Along with those gifts, Bryce sent a text to Sean just saying, "I love you, bro. Seriously, you're the best person I've ever met, and you saved my soul." Again, very concerning behavior. And all of these things happened within the same first 2 weeks of Bryce's second semester of college. So at this point, Bryce had been drinking and abusing prescription drugs for a minimum of 4 months. So enough time for the medication to be pretty good in his system and for him to be showing some of the side effects that I mentioned before. Bryce also said that he had something to tell his parents. So on the evening of August 28th, he planned a trip home to have this conversation with his family. Unsure of what it was, but he felt that he needed to do it in person. So rather than calling or texting, he was just going to get in the car, make the 7-hour drive, see his family in person. Kim, now his ex-girlfriend, was very worried about Bryce and his behavior, and she did not feel comfortable letting him get behind the wheel of the car. So she took his keys and called Karen and told her that she did not think he was in any condition to be driving. To argue that, Bryce actually called his mom himself and told her that Kim was simply upset about the breakup and that's why she didn't want him to leave and that he was fine. Karen believed him and told Kim to just give him his keys and let him come home. He left around 11:30 p.m., claiming to be returning to his apartment. Around 1 o'clock on the morning of the 29th, so just a couple of hours later, Kim missed a call from Bryce. She assumed he was calling to let her know that he had made it home. It was later revealed that the phone call pinged hours away from his apartment, which means he would have had to have left Kim and then immediately started this drive in order to be hours away. At 11 a.m. on that same day, Karen got a call from the insurance stating that Bryce had requested roadside assistance. Once they got to the bottom of that call, it was discovered that Bryce had actually ran out of gas at around the midway point between his apartment and his parents' house, so about 3.5 hours. This person who called from the insurance company told Karen that an employee by the name of Christian delivered 3 gallons of gas to Bryce around 9 a.m., which is 2 hours before they called to inform his parents. Because of this, Karen and Michael assumed that he had been on his way home since he had gotten the gas and he would be arriving home at any time. Hours later, when Bryce had still not arrived home, Karen called not Bryce, but the insurance back and was put in touch with Christian, who actually kindly offered to go back and check on Bryce. Surprisingly, 4 hours after the gas was originally delivered, Bryce was still sitting in the same spot on the side of the road where Christian had left him. Christian noted that Bryce's eyes were a little red, and he actually put him in touch with his mother. Even though he didn't explain why he had been sitting in the same spot for hours, Bryce did agree to get back on the road and promised to his parents that he would be home by 3 o'clock. Now we're at 6 o'clock. When 6 o'clock came around and Bryce had still not arrived at their home, Michael and Karen called the police and reported Bryce missing. At that point, the police pinged Bryce's phone and discovered he was only 8 miles away from where he had been 2 hours earlier in the day when Christian had came out to check on him. The police made contact with Bryce and that he said that he seemed fine and coherent. He told them that he was blowing off some steam and relaxing before finishing his drive. He passed a field sobriety test and even allowed the officers to search his car, in which they did not find any drugs or alcohol. The officers asked Bryce to please talk to your mom, put her at ease, which he did, seemingly fine. He told her he was there to meet friends, though no one knows who those friends are or where they were supposed to be, why it had taken so long for them to get there, why he was just sitting on the road. None of that really made sense at all. At that time, Karen asked Bryce to please just come home, and he agreed. At 2 o'clock the following morning, Karen got a call from Bryce. So, at this point, we're up to August 30th. This trip that should have taken 7 hours has taken 27 hours, and it's not even completed yet. On the phone call, Bryce told Karen that he was too tired to keep driving and that he was going to pull over and take a nap before continuing his trip. Unfortunately, that would be the last time Karen would talk to her son. The next morning, when they heard the doorbell ring, they expected to find their son. But instead, Michael and Karen were greeted by a California Highway Patrol officer asking if they owned a 2003 beige Toyota Highlander. Confused, they explained to the officer that that was their son's car. The police officer proceeded to tell Bryce's parents that his car had been involved in an accident and appeared that and it appeared that Bryce had broken the back window to get out and abandoned the vehicle. The car was found lying on its side at the bottom of a 25-foot embankment. Bryce's laptop, cell phone, and wallet were all left inside. 2 drops of blood that was later confirmed to be Bryce's was found inside the car, and an unzipped duffel bag was found nearby. The mom and me almost instinctively said diaper bag, but it was a duffel bag. Understandably, the discovery of Bryce's car warranted more questions than answers. The most curious discovery during the investigation into the car accident is that it appeared that the driver of the vehicle had used the accelerator rather than the brakes while approaching the embankment. The cliff is said to look much steeper and closer to the water than it actually is, and because of this, someone might assume that if they were to drive over the edge, they would be driving into the water. As the search for Bryce really began, dogs were brought in to assess local law enforcement, search dogs. These dogs tracked him across a bridge, through a recreational area, and to a nearby truck stop where the trail eventually went cold and the dogs lost their scent. The search for Bryce continued on foot, horseback, ATVs, and there were even dive teams to search the area bodies of water. On September 4th of 2013, a fire in the area where Bryce was last seen was called in. Unfortunately, upon arrival, police discovered charred remains. Originally, the thought was that this body could be Bryce, but it was later identified and it was confirmed not to be the body of Bryce Laspisa. Without a body, the case was unable to be closed. The Laspisa family hired a private investigator. However, not much came of that other than his own personal opinions and theories. And the Laspisa family still holds out hope that Bryce is out there and that he will be found one day. And I know that this seems like a drastic ending to the story, but that's really it. He went missing. They had one lead with the dogs. When that didn't pan out, his body wasn't found. That's as far as the investigation really went. So, anyone with information from 2013 or sooner that could help the investigation or help investigators locate Bryce can call the Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department at 323-890-5500 or connect NCMEC at 1-800-THE-LOST, which is 1-800-843-5678. And to provide information anonymously, you can always, for any case, call Crime Stoppers at 800-222-8477. So, before we wrap up, I would like to talk about some of the theories because there are actually quite a few of them. I think the most common is that people think Bryce died by suicide. Things like giving away his belongings and the car being accelerated rather than applying the brakes would very much point to that. Another is that he faked the suicide in order to be able to walk away from his life and start a new one. It is important to note Bryce has a very distinctive look. He has this beautiful, dark, natural red hair, and it's just like the cutest little true ginger. So you would think somebody would see him, and there have been rumored sightings of Bryce in random places all over the United States, but it seems all of them have been able to be dispelled by police. The latest was actually in Montana in 2022. The family says they didn't believe this was the case, that he would just walk away from his life because there was no problem big enough that he wouldn't be able to talk to his family about and get help with. Similar to that, along the same lines, but a little different, some people believe that he unfortunately suffered a psychotic break, leading to him to walk away and live off of the grid. It is notable that his bank account, passport, and social security number have not been used at all since that day. The theory that the private investigator had, the one that the family hired, along with many other people, especially in the true crime space, is that during the accident, Bryce likely sustained a head injury, indicated by the drops of blood left behind in the car, and then he stumbled away from the crash, got confused, lost in the wilderness, and eventually fell victim to either the elements or his injuries or a combination of both of those things. Now, a lot of people wonder why the 7-hour drive turned into a 30-hour drive. Some say the reason for this could be a couple of different things. The first of which being that he sat on the side of the road for so long because he was waiting for his dealer to show up, and he did not want to leave and miss out on getting a fix. This would be backed up by the police not finding any drugs or alcohol in his car. Could it be that he was just waiting for the drugs to arrive? It could also be backed up by the fact that he told his mom he was there to see friends, but she was not familiar with any friends he had in the area. And again, he was simply sitting on the side of the road. He was not at a restaurant or anywhere where you would actually meet friends. Another idea around the reason for the 30-hour road trip is that he was trying to hide or escape from someone. A couple of believers of this say that he staged the accident so that whoever was chasing him would think that he died, but maybe they eventually found him and murdered him, or that whoever he was hiding from murdered him first, and then they staged the accident themselves to cover up their crime. But in that case, they likely would have just left the body, because that's more explainable than him being missing. Also, when his friends and family were asked if he had any enemies, anyone would be after him, if he owed anyone, if he had slept with someone else's girlfriend, everyone said no. There's no reason anyone would have been looking for him, searching for him, wanting to hurt him, wanting to kill him. So that one doesn't hold a whole lot of validity. Some say that he walked to that truck stop where the dogs tracked him and then he was murdered by a trucker. Or he walked to that truck stop, got a ride, and just left his troubles behind. There are so many more theories. This is actually just scratching the surface of the theories that people believe. My personal opinion was that Bryce was unfortunately in a suicidal crisis. I'm not sure how long it's sustainable for a person to drink as much as it was rumored Bryce was drinking, along with taking pills and not sleeping. I personally think that it would not take long before your body and brain would just start to shut down, and that can bring very scary thoughts. I know the family talks about how close and open they all are, but I do have to say that Karen's behavior was very weird. I don't mean to victim blame at all, and she is certainly a victim of losing her child in one way or another. I cannot imagine one of my children going through an episode like this and not just getting in my car and driving to him. Why are we wasting time calling insurance, calling roadside assistance, calling the police, when we could just get on the road and drive to him and get Bryce and talk to him yourself and see what's going on and what he needs? Sometimes no cry for help is a cry for help. Again, I am not blaming the mom, but it's hard to think that maybe we wouldn't even be talking about this had different actions been taken. I mean, he was at most 3.5 hours away from where they were, and he sat there for 7 hours. So you had time to get there twice and see what was going on with him, why he was sitting there. I mean, I can't imagine knowing my baby is sitting on the side of the road for that long for no reason and not attempting to go and do something about it. I just can't fathom that. And like I said, I'm not blaming her in any way. I just think that at some point your motherly instincts would kick in. There are some mothers who talk about they don't even know that their child is in a dangerous situation, but they wake up in the middle of the night just feeling like something is wrong. And that was the moment that their child was, being attacked by someone committing domestic violence, or that is unfortunately when their child was killed. And so I just can't help but feel in my heart that she knew there was more to the story and more could have been done. And I keep saying I'm not victim blaming, and that does sound victim blaming, and I'm sorry, but it's my opinion. That is my opinion. I absolutely feel that the car accident was an attempt to take his own life. I think that he thought he would be driving into the water and that he would just succumb to that. Now, what happened after that didn't work and he walked away from the car crash? That's where I'm not really sure where my opinion lies. Did he have internal or brain injuries? And if so, how far could he have gotten? I think that he could. The private investigator's theory that he could have walked away and then succumbed to those injuries is possible. You would think the search would pull that up, or the dogs would have found him, and dogs are often wrong, but it does also speak to me that he was traced back to a truck stop where there are tons of people. Truck stops are very busy, but no truck driver or anyone at that truck stop reported seeing him. And as I said, he has a very distinctive look. Unfortunately, I think Bryce probably somehow found a way to take his life. I can't help but think of the unzipped duffel bag that was found at the accident site. It could have been left unzipped from the search that the police did on the car, but it more so looks like he took something out of the bag. And if that's the case, what did he take out of that bag that was more important than his wallet? Knowing what is missing from the bag, if anything, I think could help the case greatly. I actually think about Bryce Laspisa very often. It is, I guess, what you would refer to as my Roman Empire. I will just be driving or sitting around and I'm just like, man, what happened to Bryce Laspisa? I actually feel that way about a lot of missing persons cases. I will try to keep covering them to a minimum on the podcast, but I very much enjoy talking about a missing persons case because more often than not, we just don't have answers. And sometimes it takes 20, 30 years to get answers. Sometimes we never get answers. And I don't know, I don't want to say I like a missing persons case. I like looking at it from an investigatory lens. And, I am oftentimes an Occam's razor girly, which, the simplest answer probably is the true answer. And I think most of the time that is the case with all cases, but especially missing person cases where you just have to look at the facts. And the facts were he was showing signs of being suicidal, and he wanted to get to his family, but he just couldn't quite make it. And I think that is the case for a lot of people who are feeling that way in life. They want to reach out to their family, they want to ask for help, and they just don't know how or how they'll be viewed, and so they do what they think is the answer, and unfortunately that is taking their own life. But again, this is all just my opinion. Bryce is still considered a missing person with an open and active case. Anyone with information from 2013 or sooner that could help investigators locate Bryce should call the Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department. Again, the number is 323-890-5500 or contact NCMEC at 1-800-THE-LOST. To provide information anonymously, you can call Crime Stoppers at 800-222-TIPS, which is 8477. Now, I've struggled to know how to wrap these episodes up. Someone mentioned that I should probably promote myself at the end, which feels very weird and very uncomfortable for me. I do not like to promote myself promote myself, but I am very proud of this podcast. I know that we are still in the early stages and there's a long way to go, and it's going to grow so much, and I'm so excited for that. So I'm going to go ahead and do it. If you guys would go to whatever platform you listen on and leave a review, leave a 5-star rating, make sure you are subscribed to get updates when new information is, or when new episodes are posted. That helps push the podcast in the algorithm and put it out there for more people, and will help me get more listeners. So I would actually really appreciate the help in doing that. Follow on all social media: Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, and TikTok. And then you can follow my personal accounts as well: Elisa Alexis Bird Hill on Facebook and That Bird Girl on Instagram. And I will try to be better about saying all of this at the end of every episode. And so if you do take the time to do that, I appreciate it so much. Thank you guys. Bye.